What up, YouTube? It's your favorite bean eating mofo, fresh off the banana boat. Big Lou tapping on in with what it do with Big Lou, NFZR2, baby, baby. If this is the first time you're coming to the channel at What It Do with Big Lou, NFZR2, it'd be highly appreciated if you if you sub, liked, and shared the channel with your family, friends, peoples, gente, camaradas, comrades, uh, buddies, pals, associates, amigos, panas. And also feel free to leave comments. I'll respond back to all comments. So as you guys can see, the thumbnail, it's about the Rico Act. And what is your take? What do people think about the Rico Act? Is it unconstitutional? Is it a crock of shit? Is it just giving the authorities, law enforcement, is it basically doing their job for them? You know what I mean? Flip people and then have them tell on people. And then I don't know if how aware some of you people are that watch, that pay attention to some of these things, but sometimes you can have people that are indicted under the RICO, where there's 30, 40, 50 people indicted, and you don't even know, everybody don't even know each other. They string people up in RICO charges, something simple as just like a phone call, and somebody's saying yes on a phone call, or maybe a message being passed like, tell so-and-so this, and that person on the other end of the phone says okay, and boom, now they're wrapped up in the RICO charge as well, for something like definitely a smaller charge, but still wrapped up, still got to get arrested, still go to the court, all the court proceedings, still have to do time, still have to pay money on lawyers, and it's, and in my opinion, it just makes law enforcement's job a lot easier. You know what I mean? This law was introduced to Congress back in 1970 by Robert Blakely, right? He was I believe at the time, I'm not sure if he was a professor at the time, or was he still a student? I'm not sure about that. But this law was originally written to take down the Italians and the Italian mob, right? The Sicilian Italian mob of the United States. There was at the time 26 families, something like that, 26 families in the United States. Everybody always talks about New York. You got the 5 families in New York, then you got Buffalo, New York, you got New Jersey, you got Philly, you got Rhode Island, the New England, which is basically at that time was Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island, and Boston, right? The boss was in Rhode Island, Providence, and which was Raymond Patriarca, and the underboss was in Boston, Jerry Angulo, Jerry Angulo, and then you had Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis, Milwaukee, Dallas, Denver, San Jose, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New Orleans, and you had Russell Bufalino's family, which I believe was also a family of Pennsylvania, but it wasn't Philly, right? It was Scranton, I believe it was Scranton, and Wilkes-Barre or something like that. So there was like a total of 26 families throughout the nation, right? And like I said, it was introduced in 1970, but I believe the first RICO case that they got somebody for was bikers, right? And I believe they didn't take it. Nobody was charged with that until 1978 or 1979, and there were some bikers, right? And the commission case was when Giuliani was the head of the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office, is when he read the book by Joe Bonanno, and Joe Bonanno gave up a lot of inside things about the commission and how things ran. From that point of view, from a actual boss, or he called himself a father at the time. Bella and friends, how you doing? And what he called himself a father of a family, right? And then other people would say, you know, the boss. So his book, Men of Honor, I believe it was called, you know, he broke everything down from Sicily, some of his his family members in Sicily, because if people don't know, Joe Bonanno and Stefano Magaddino were cousins, right? And so part of his lineage was the Magaddino family, and then I believe he was also related to Bon, the Bonventre family. I think, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but these guys were very respected families, clans of Sicily, right back in the day. And then Bonanno had came to the United States with his parents, and then later returned to Sicily. And then I believe he took off for school, and then eventually he made his way back to New York, and where he was under Maranzano, and then Maranzano was killed in 31, and then he became the head of that family, that Borgata, and he was only like 26, 27 at the time. So unheard of, definitely unheard of, somebody to be that young to be a head of a family. And he wasn't no acting boss, he was boss, you know, or godfather, like they called it back then. You know, John, fast forward to the future, John Gotti Jr. was, 1990, he was 26 when he became acting boss. But you're talking Joe Bonanno was boss, straight up boss. Okay, so when he wrote that book, Men of Honor, which I read, it was a good reading. I liked it. I liked the book a lot. I ran across it when I was locked up in the pen. One of my homeboys had it, and he let me read it, and he was like, "Don't let nobody look at it. Don't give it to nobody." You know, he was very protective of that book. So I read the book, you know, and he broke down a lot of things where he talked about, you know, Luciano and Carlo Gambino and Albert Anastasia and Tommy Lucchese and Joe Profaci, because he was real close. Joe Bonanno and Joe Bonanno and Joe Profaci were real close, right? I want to say they were both from Castellammare del Golfo, also in Sicily, right? And then you had some of the other Sicilians, such as Gambino, were from Palermo, right? And so the Colombos and the Bonanos were allies, pretty tight back in the day. And then Gambino and Lucchese were tight. And then Carlo Gambino's son Tommy married Tommy Lucchese's daughter, right? And then also Joe Profaci's niece married Joe Bonanno's son, Bill, right? And then I believe there's another Profaci niece married one of the Detroit guys, one of either the Zarellis or Tocos. And so, you know, the Sicilians believe that, you know, you keep the blood stronger. You know what I'm saying? You keep the blood stronger by marrying your own peoples, basically, you know, and a lot of them married their own cousins, right? It's happened a couple of different occasions. Carlo Gambino married his cousin, which is Paul Castellano's sister. That's how their brother-in-laws and cousins. They were cousins and then brother-in-laws because he married his first cousin. Then there's another guy. I was speaking to somebody on the phone a couple of days ago, and he told me that there was a family member that was cousins with them, with Carlo Gambino and Paul Castellano, and he was married to a cousin of his own. So the Sicilians believe real tough on, you know, keeping the bloodline as strong as possible, even if it meant, you know, being with your own cousin. You know what I mean? And they strengthened the ties. You know, it is what it is. That's what they did. You know, me personally, I think this kind of weird, you know, but it is what it is, right? Yeah, that's nasty and gross. Yeah, I mean it is, but you know, you got the tradition of being from there. You know, that's what they just believed, and then they believed because of what they were doing and what they were involved with. You know, the criminal involvement, that it would keep, you know, if your blood ties were even stronger, that it would keep anybody from ever opening their mouth and telling. You know, that's just how they believed. You know, and then later it got a little more watered down, where, you know, guys like especially the Profaci Colombo families were they were making all their sons, you know, all the bosses, excuse me, Joe Profaci made his son Sal Profaci, right? Joe Colombo, he had his sons Joe and Anthony were made. Then Carmine Persico had two brothers, they were involved. Their sons were all hooked up, right? And then a lot of their captains and under boss Sonny Francis, as everybody knows, Michael was made. You got Ralph Scopo, his son Jojo. You got Andy Mush and his sons. You got Buster Alloy and his sons, Sebastian, and I forgot the other one's name right now. Greg Scarpa Jr. There's a lot of guys in the Colombos. I mean, they were big on nepotism in the Colombo family, huge, right? And they felt that if, you know, they started making their sons and cousins, nephews, brothers, you know, things like that, that they would be less likely to tell. You know what I'm saying? Because it is what it is. It's a belief that you're raised with, right? You know. What's up, Nelly? Content Entertainment. I said mine, bro. Parmero, orale. I said mine's right back at you. Uh-oh. Oh, I hit a button on accident. And so yeah, it is what it is. But when it Giuliani, like I said, Giuliani gets a lot of the credit for the commission case because he was the head U.S. attorney from that office. That's the New York Southern District office, right? The NYSD, or if it's called it's called the NYSD, I believe, or unless it's the SDNY, I'm not sure. But he gets a lot of the credit for that, but it really was other guys. There was other people that were involved. You know, every family had a squad, right? FBI squad. You know, like one might be called C10. The C10 squad followed the Gambinos. The C12 squad followed the Genovese. Everybody had a squad that followed them, and certain agents would be designated to certain members, right? Alleged members, right? So I don't know if you guys ever hear Sammy the Bull. He always talks about the twins used to follow him, Maddie and something. I don't remember the other guy's name, but those guys were assigned to him. You know, another guy was, I don't know if George Gabriel was assigned to Gotti, but they had a whole team a big old huge team of guys, of FBI agents, guys and gals, because they have that Netflix. There's a Netflix show called Fear City. And basically, it's about the commission and how they started hearing, you know, they wiretap and place bugs in a lot of different locations and different on all the families. And so they spoke to a lot of guys and women from different squads. So again, everybody knows, well, I don't know if everybody knows, I'll say it now. New York City was comprised of 5 families, right? The original families were the Lucania family, the Bonanno family, the Mangano family, the Profaci family, and the Reina family, right? Okay, then the Reina family turned into the Gagliano family, and then now what is known as the Lucchese family. The Bonanos has always been the Bonanos. The Manganos eventually became the Gambinos. The Profacis are now the Colombos, and the Lucania family is the Genovese. Okay, so there's 5 families. Each family, like I mentioned, had a squad that would follow them and do whatever, surveillance, photos, yada, 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 right? Okay, so when Giuliani, so keep in mind, this is about 15 years, 14 years, about 14 years after the Rico law was introduced to Congress, and it was voted in on the books, right, as a law. And like I said, it took them almost 10 years before they brought anybody to court under that RICO Act, which were bikers. They weren't even mob members, right? It was bikers. They were the first ones used under that. And so when he started reading Bonanno's book, and Bonanno's giving up, you know, things that shouldn't have been talked about because, you know, regardless if you're active in the life, you took an oath, right? And so when you break that oath and you're telling about a secret society, you're putting the mark, you're putting a target on your back, right? And they spared his life before, back in the 60s, because you know, there was a plot that was hatched allegedly by him and Magliocco. And so Joe Profaci, I believe, died, if I remember correctly, he died in 63 or 64. And then his underboss at the time, which was also his brother-in-law, Joseph Magliocco, took over as boss. And him and Bonanno had alleged scheme to take out Carlo Gambino and Tommy Lucchese from take them out, killing them, right? These are all two members of the commission. So the task was given to allegedly Joe Colombo, and Joe Colombo, instead of seeing it out and doing it, he ends up giving the information to Carlo Gambino, and then Carlo Gambino summons these guys to come to the commission, and pretty much from history, what's said and written in history, Joe Magliocco spills the beans and admits to it. And so they force him into retirement, and then they force Joe Bonanno out from being the boss of the Bonannos, but he was stubborn about things. He didn't want to go like that. And then he plots this this kidnap plan hatched, or excuse me, how did I say that? He disappears and says that he was kidnapped and he was taken somewhere, and then he finally comes back out, I think after about a year or 16 months, 18 months. He was away for a while, and they had no idea where he was at. And then when he comes back, he said that his cousin Stefano Magaddino was behind the kidnapping. And so this was like I said, 64-ish. I think he resurfaced like 66. He became the head of his Borgata in 1931. So this guy already had over 3 decades of leadership already under his belt. And then they forced him out, right? And Colombo was awarded the backing from Gambino, and he pretty much placed him as the boss, right? And so fast forward that a little bit later to the Italian rallies, the Civil Rights Italian League, the second year of the existence, they were going to do another rally. And the first time the other guys were backing it, and then 305K, what's going on, man? A long time no see. And so had the backing of the rest of the Borgatas. And then that second year, they were going to do another rally. They did do a rally, but it was ordered through all the other Borgatas, starting with Carlo, to not attend, do not close down your shops and all that like you did the year before. And from my understanding, Colombo was told to back off that. You know what I mean? It was bringing way too much heat from the law enforcement, and he didn't listen. And so it was said that either Carlo Gambino had that done to Joe Colombo, or with Joe Gallo. You know what I mean? So that's never been really actually established. Really, who was the culprit behind all that? Joe Colombo shooting in Columbus Square, I think it was, in New York City, right? I think it was Columbus Square. So anyways, he picks up a lot, like I said, he picks up a lot of information from that book. And then I believe Bonanno was subpoenaed to come speak to Congress about it. I think it was Congress. If not, it was I think maybe even Giuliani went to Arizona to talk to him, interview him or whatever. And of course then he hushed up then. But by that time the damage was done. So Giuliani used a lot of what was said in there and used the Rico Act to come after the bosses, right? And at the time it was Big Paul from the Gambinos and Neil Della Croce. And then it was from the Colombos, they got Persico, Jerry Lang, and Ralph Scopel. From the Lucchese's, they got the entire administration. They got Tony Dux Corallo, they got Salvatore Tommy Mix Santoro, and they got Christy Tick Feneri, right? And then the Genovese, they got Fat Tony Salerno, and I believe originally Rusty Rastelli was picked up, but they later found out that they were kicked off the commission. They no longer had a commission seat, and they also were not part of the Dibian of the funds from the Concrete Club. That only four families were receiving money from that. The Bonannos were not. So he didn't get indicted on that, or they didn't proceed with them any further after that. My cousin got put on a Rico case. Took like 2 years for him to get off. He literally didn't do anything. Shit was crazy. Cost him a ton of money. Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. Where like, you know, a lot of guys are on there that don't even know each other. They're in the same indictment, never met each other, but they're co-defendants on the same indictment. You know, and it could be something simple like, you know, somebody makes a phone call to you. Maybe you're at somebody's residence or something, or maybe they call you to just pass a message along to somebody, and it might even be something not even detailed or nothing. It might just be something like, hey, when you talk to that guy, let that guy know that it's all good, that's going to be taken care of. And then you just say, yeah, okay, and boom, now you're wrapped up in it, you know. But of course, your involvement is not as extended as some other people's, and you don't come out with as much time. But like you just said there, it costs them a ton of money. So, you know, you still got to go through the bullshit of getting arrested. You got to go through the court proceedings. You have to pay lawyers. So all that stuff is you know, it sucks. You know what I mean? And then you still come out with a little bit of time, you know, because, you know, don't get me wrong. Some people have beat the Rico, you know, charges, but for the most part, you don't beat it. You know what I mean? Excuse me. And also who got indicted and convicted from the Bananos was Bruno and Delicado. They went back to 79 and they seen, I guess they got his print or something off a vehicle or a stolen vehicle. And then a little bit later, after the murder of Carmine Galante at Joe and Mary's restaurant in July 12th of 79, they seen him show up at I think it was the Raven Night, in Manhattan, Little Italy. And he was it looked like a lot of congratulations was going around. And I believe at some point in one of the shots that they were taking, the surveillance, it was him like reporting to Neil Dellacroce, and Neil like giving him a good pat on the back and like, you know, giving him a good job, like attaboy type deals, right? He had to put a house up to get bail, and he did absolutely nothing. Yeah, and I think too the bail system with the feds, it's majority property, like, and stuff like that you put up. You got to go to a bail hearing and all that. It's a lot different than the state than when you get busted for, you know, in the state. And so yeah, so Bruno went down for the Bananos, and then and this is another thing too that I feel is crock of shit. You know, they'll come to a judge, you know, to get a warrant, you know what I mean, and they present them with whatever evidence, you know, because you can't just go to the judge and say, oh, we believe these guys are you know, mobsters and they're doing illegal stuff, and the judge says, oh, okay, and signs off, right? You're supposed to give them some type of evidence to back up your accusations, you know. But even then, I don't care if you even say, oh, we have this and this and this and that to believe that this guy's doing this and that guy's doing that. But at the same time, to me, what don't sit right with me is that, you know, the judge signs off on it on a break and enter warrant on top of, you know, wiretapping and phone tapping and such things as that. But, you know, they're also, you know, not only do they break in your place and give your, you know, they trip your security system, give your dogs stuff to knock them out so they can walk past them. But they're also, you know, like I said, breaking into your places. But then they're going into your place of business. They're playing the part like they're cable guys or they're pest control, whatever the heck it is, just to get inside your premises to place a bug. I think that's crap. I don't think that should even be legal. You know what I mean? So if we go back and look at the history of what happened there with that case, you had guys that would, knowing that Paul Castellano had problems with his cable, they intercepted some phone calls, and then they went in there and acted like they were the cable company, and then they were placing bugs, right? Listening devices. They also broke into restaurants, placed bugs under tables. I think over there on Carroll Street for the Columbos. Fat Tony would always have somebody in the Palma Boys Social Club, pretty much 24/7. But they waited for him to tell these guys to go ahead and go home for the holidays, and they broke in there and they put some bugs there. They also bugged the Jaguar, Sally Avellino's Jaguar, which he drove He drove Tony Ducks around a lot. I believe Salvatore Tommy Mix was in the vehicle a few times. Um, you know, that type of shit, shady. It's to me deviant behavior. You know what I mean? The judge signs off on it, and then you go break into homes, and you know, into social clubs and places of business, and then, like I said, fronting like you're a cable guys, and you're not, just to go in there and place a bug. I think that shit's shady. You know, I don't even think it should be. I don't believe it's constitutional for the Rico or break and enter warrants. You know, to place bugs and stuff like that, because we know it. We know it. A lot of times, a lot of times, these guys that they get to flip, they'll say whatever to sell it to save themselves. You know, they'll tell you whatever you want to hear to save themselves, or they don't got to go to jail. It's been proven time and time again. You know, uh, so many different levels. It's been proven. I don't know how many times, more than you can shake a stick at, right? But I just don't think it's cool. I don't think any of it's cool. You know, let the cops, let the FBI, let the DEA, let the ATF, let the you know, Homeland Security, the U.S. Marshals, your state and local cops, the sheriff's department, the police departments, let them do old-fashioned footwork to get their cases closed, not flip this one and we go plant bugs. And you know, I think that's just a bunch of crock of shit, you know, in my opinion. You know, and then, you know, some of these guys like Giuliani, they get obsessed with it, you know, where they, by all means, they got to take you down. They're gonna do it. You know what I mean? And then, you know, now what they're doing with this Rico, you know, they're going after bikers and gang members now. So if you look at the federal system, the BOP, the Bureau of Prisons, it used to be, you know, like you know, mobsters, white collar crimes, bank robbers, like that. Now you got a bunch of gang members in there, different gang members from all over the place, from California, from Florida, from New York, from Chicago, Detroit, Texas, whatever, right? And then you got bikers, you know. So if you got a felony conviction, then you get busted with a gun, you know, now it's a federal beef, right? It's a federal beef, you know. Now, you know, now you're, you know, like what they've been doing, they're just filling up the BOPs with a bunch of gang members now. It's a total different, it's just totally different. And it's become if you watch channels like Blood on the Razor Wire, Chad Marks, you know, he has guys on from all over the United States, and they tell of these vicious stories of the USPs, the United States penitentiaries. But don't get things twisted, people. Things happen on the FCIs as well, the federal correctional institutions, FCIs, and I think they call them too FCCs maybe. You know, there'll be a medium, and cell living. You know what I mean? You don't have to necessarily be in a USP, and shit can get jiggy with it there too. You know, shit can go from 0 to 60. I mean, in a matter of seconds. You know what I mean? Where it gets ugly, where, you know, guys are getting beat up to a bloody pulp. You know, they might be getting hit with a broomstick, with the, you know, with the all kinds of different things. And then you also you know, knives with pieces. You know, it's real easy to construct a weapon. You know what I'm saying? It's real easy. You know, some people don't know how to do it. Some people will buy them from people. You know, I guess that's a hustle in there too. People will make them and sell them. You know what I mean? You can whip up a tomahawk real easy. You know, with just a few blades, couple blades, 2 to 4 blades, you can whip up a nice little tomahawk. You know, and if you can find any type of metal, you know, any type of metal, you can make yourself a good little, you know, a good little piece with the toothbrush handle, and melt it in there. You know, you need some fire though. You know, even something simple like staples, you can make a weapon with that. You know, it might not, you know, you're not gonna do a lot of damage with it, but you'll draw blood, and things can get real ugly, like as far as messy. Excuse me. You know, some people, when they see that blood, they freak out. You know what I mean? So, you know, I've been hearing other stories though lately about guys selling weapons, uh, which is kind of weird because, you know, it's just like on the street too. Like when it comes to, you know, uh, bang bangs. You know what I'm saying? Most of the people nowadays, they don't want to get rid of what they get because they'll keep it for themselves or their neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the same thing in there. You don't have those in there, so the next best thing, which we still call them bangers, is a piece, right? Get yourself a piece, and because it's just vicious in there, right? But uh, just me personally, I just don't dig, all that. The Rico, I don't dig the placing of the bugs. And that could be on the phone. That could be just a bug placed somewhere on the phone. You got wiretaps, listening devices, bugs. It could be all the same thing, or it could be, a little bit different. You know what I mean? Because what I mean by that is you put it in different areas. So if anybody don't know, the RICO Act stands for Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations, and it provides for extended criminal penalties and a civil cause of action for acts performed as part of a ongoing criminal investigation. So it's, as we know, it's an act relating to control of organized crime in the U.S. Right? Uh, and the acronym is RICO, RICO. And like I said, it came out in 1970, enacted by the 91st U.S. Congress, and it was effective October 15th, 1970. Um, Titles amended 18 USC Crimes and Criminal Procedure, and the USC section created 18 USC SS 1961 through 68. So it was introduced in the Senate as S30 by John L. McClellan, right? Democrat from Arkansas. And then it passed the Senate on January 23rd, 1970. And then it passed the House on October 7th, 1970. Oh, and it passed the Senate 74-1. And it passed the House 341 to 26. And then it was signed into law by Richard Nixon, right? There's a lot of different Supreme Court cases that are known nationwide, that are used. There's way too many to go through. But in beginning in 72, there was 33 states adopted state RICO laws to be able to prosecute similar conduct. So they have one here in California too, but it's called something else. I think it's called, I believe it's California. Let's see, let me give a little background. At least two acts of, let me see, under RICO, a person who has committed at least two acts under racketeering activity drawn from a list of 35 crimes, 27 federal crimes, and 8 state crimes within a 10-year period can be charged with racketeering if such acts are related in one of 4 specific ways to an enterprise. Those found guilty of racketeering can be fined up to $25,000 and sentenced to 20 years in prison per racketeering count. In addition, the racketeer must forfeit all ill-gotten gains and interests in any business gained through a pattern of racketeering activity. So that's a broad deal there, right? So the U.S. attorney who decides to indict someone under RICO has the option of seeking a pretrial restraining order or injunction to temporarily seize a defendant's assets and prevent the transfer of potentially forfeitable property, and to require the defendant to put up a performance bond. That provision was placed in the law because the owners of mafia-related shell corporations often absconded with the assets. An injunction or performance bond ensures that there is something to seize in the event of a guilty verdict. In many cases, the threat of a RICO indictment can force defendants to plead guilty to lesser charges, in part because the seizure of assets would make it difficult to pay defense attorney. Despite its harsh provisions, a RICO-related charge is considered easy to prove in court since it focuses on patterns of behavior as opposed to criminal acts. So that's there it is there. That's part of what makes it so difficult to beat. If they, what'd you say there? They washing small street gangs with Rico now to end some places. Yeah. Rico also permits a private individual damage in his business or property by a racketeer to file a civil lawsuit. The plaintiff must prove the existence of an enterprise. The defendant or defendants are not the enterprise. In other words, the defendant or defendants and the enterprise are not one and the same. There must be one of four specified relationships between the defendants, and the enterprise. Either the defendant or defendants invested the proceeds of the pattern of racketeering activity into the enterprise, 18 UFC S62A, or the defendants acquired or maintained an interest in or control of the enterprise through the pattern of racketeering activity, subsection B, or the defendant conducted or participated in the affairs of the enterprise through patterns of racketeering activity, subsection C, or the defendants conspired to do one of the above, subsection D. In essence, the enterprise is either the prize, instrument, victim, or perpetrator of the racketeers. A civil RICO action can be filed in state or federal court. See, that's just it just makes it more broader and harder to defeat, right? Makes it harder to defend yourself, to put together a proper defense sometimes. Both the criminal and the civil components allow the recovery of tremblay damages, triple the amount of actual and compensatory damages. Although its primary intent was to deal with organized crime, Blakely said that Congress never intended it to merely to apply to the mob. That's bullcrap. Once he told Time, we don't want one set of rules for people whose collars are blue and those names end in vowels, and another set for those collars are white and have Ivy League diplomas. Yeah, I don't buy that one bit. Buffalo Billy. I tried to look for you, Buffalo Billy, on IG, and I couldn't. You didn't kick back your IG. The first ever RICO, here we go. This is a little background. So I said originally it was 78 or 79, so it was 79. The first ever RICO trial was conducted in May of 79 in the United States versus Sam Bailey gang by prosecutor Mark L. Webb in San Francisco, California, Northern District of California. The case was tried successfully by the use of the RICO statute in alleging that a gang of postal burglars and a Nevada fence collaborated criminally in an organized crime fashion. The case did not involve a mafia crime family. The RICO Act was first used by U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York on September 18, 1975, in the U.S. versus Scotto, who was convicted on charges of racketeering, accepting unlawful labor payments, and income tax evasion, headed the International Longshoremen. Okay, so I stand corrected on that. It wasn't bikers. They weren't bikers from what I just read there. They were a gang of postal burglars and a Nevada fence. Okay, so during the 80s and 90s, federal prosecutors used the law to bring charges against several mob figures. The second major success was the Mafia Commission case, which I touched on that, right? Giuliani indicted 11 organized crime figures, including the heads of the New York so-called five families, under the RICO Act on charges including extortion, labor racketeering, and murder for hire. Time magazine called the case case of cases possibly the most significant assault on the infrastructure of organized crime since the high command of Chicago mob were swept away in 1943. I need to put it back up. Yeah, because last time you were on here, when I was talking about the intro and all that, you said you put the IG back up, but I couldn't find you. The Gambino family boss, Castellano, evaded conviction when he and his underboss Bellotti were killed And then remember, 2 weeks before that, De La Croce died on November 2nd of 85. So they were wiped off the indictments. Genovese and Colombo leaders Salerno and Persico received additional sentence in separate trials, with the 70-year-old and 39-year-old sentence, with the 70-year and 39-year sentence to run consecutively. He was assisted by three. Okay, so these are the Michael Chernoff and the eventual second U.S. attorney, U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security and co-author of the Patriot Act, John Savarese, later a partner at Watchtail, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz, and Gil Childers, a later deputy chief of the criminal division for the Southern District of New York, and later managing director in the legal department at the Goldman Sachs. So those guys were the ones that actually came after them, but Giuliani always gets all the credit. You know, most of the time you hear, you know, and I don't know if people understand that, but Giuliani was the attorney, the head attorney of the office. He wasn't the attorney that was. He wasn't the assistant attorney. He wasn't the ADA, the U.S. ADA. He was the actual DA of, you know, pretty much like the district attorney of a county, basically. But he was the head federal district attorney for that office. He was the head, and he gets most of the time he gets the credit for the Rico, not the Rico, but the commission case, taking them down, right? So beginning in 72, like I mentioned, 33 states as well as Puerto Rico and the United States Virgin Islands adopted state RICO laws. And here's some of the predicate offenses, right, for the RICO. Under the law, the meaning of racketeering activity is set out at 18 U.S.C. S 1961. As currently amended, it includes any violation of state statutes against gambling, murder, kidnapping, extortion, arson, robbery, bribery, dealing in obscene matter, or dealing in a controlled substance or listed chemical as defined in the Controlled Substance Act. So the controlled substance is now what you get a lot of the gang members on, right? Shannon, hello, thanks for stopping by. Then you got any act of bribery, counterfeiting, theft, embezzlement, fraud, dealing in obscene matter, obstruction of justice, slavery, racketeering, gambling, money laundering, commission of murder for hire, and many other offenses covered under the Federal Criminal Act, Title 18. Also, embezzlement of union funds. So that would be like, you know, longshoremen, you know, any of the unions, you know, international longshoremen, what's some of the other ones? Steel workers, you know, all that, bartenders and bartenders union, you know, hotels, all that stuff. Bankruptcy fraud or security fraud, drug trafficking, long-term and elaborate drug network can be also prosecuted using the continuing criminal enterprise statute. So that's what you get a lot of gang members under. Criminal copyright infringement, money laundering and related offenses, bringing in, aiding, or assisting aliens in illegally entering the country if the action was for financial gain. So you got a lot of that too. And then you got acts of terrorism. Pattern of racketeering activity requires at least 2 acts of racketeering activity, one of which occurred after the effective date of this chapter and the last of which occurred within 10 years, excluding any period of imprisonment. After the commission of a prior act of racketeering activity, the U.S. Supreme Court has instructed federal courts to follow the continuity plus relationship test in order to determine whether the facts of a specific case give rise to an established pattern. The illegal acts comprising a pattern are called predicate offenses. predicate acts are related if they have the same or similar purposes, results, participants, victims, or methods of commission, or otherwise are interrelated by distinguishing characteristics and are not isolated events. Continuing is both a closed and open-ended concept, referring to either a closed period of conduct or to past conduct that it, by its nature, projects into the future with a threat of repetition. So it makes it a lot easy. There you go. Agnostic. You want to jump on agnostic? Let me know. I dropped the link in there. Yeah, Drito. Yeah, I mentioned that a little bit earlier about that on Netflix, Fair City. So it makes it just makes it more, it makes it more easier, because here you got caught up with something 8 years ago or 6 years ago, and then it says within 10 years, and then you repetition, right? You repeat it. It just makes it a lot easier, way easier, for them to give out these big old huge sentences to people when it comes to illegal activity, right? I don't like it. I think it's unconstitutional, like I said earlier. And then also the break and entering to place bugs. I don't dig any of that shit. You're supposed to be law enforcement, and a judge signs off on you, and then you pose as a, a cable guy, or AT&T or Pac Bell or whatever the heck, to get in their house to place a bug. You know what I mean? All right, yeah, I might not be on. I might not be on still because I got an important phone call. I got an important phone call. Well, actually, it's not a phone call. It's a Zoom. It's a Zoom meeting I got at 4:30. I don't really know how much longer I'm gonna be on, but if I'm still on, no doubt. That I seen something pop up on the. Yeah, so I don't dig that. I don't dig the Rico Act at all. And then let me give a little more like this. Although some of the Rico predicate acts are extortion and blackmail, one of the most successful applications of the Rico laws has been the ability to indict and or sanction individuals for their behavior and action committed against witnesses and victims in alleged retaliation or retribution for cooperating. Yeah, that's a bunch of bullshit too. Violations of the Rico laws can be alleged in civil lawsuit cases or for criminal charges. In these instances, charges can be brought against individuals or corporations in retaliations for said individuals or corporations working with law enforcement. So they just basically, they just use every little thing to try to just bash you more and bury you further. The RICO statute contains a provision that allows for the commencement of a civil action by a private party to recover damages sustained as a result of the commission of a RICO predicate offense. So here's some of the famous cases that were taken under the RICO. The Cowboy Mafia. RICO was instrumental in indicting members of this group from Texas, Tennessee, and Florida during 77 and 78. This group imported over 106 tons of marijuana using shrimp boats, Agnes Pauline, Monkey Jubilee, and Bayou Blues. The group made 6 trips from Colombia to Texas. The group was arrested in 78 after the federal government seized the Agnes Pauline when they were unloading their cargo in Port Arthur, Texas. In 79, 26 members of the smuggling ring were convicted. Charles Muscle Foster, a ranch foreman and the head of the operation, pleaded innocent by reason of insanity. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club in '79, the United States federal government went after Sonny Barger and several members and associates of the Oakland chapter of the Hells Angels using Rico in the United States versus Barger. The prosecution team attempted to demonstrate a pattern of behavior to convict Barger and other members of the club of RICO offenses related to guns and illegal drugs. The jury acquitted Barger on the RICO charges with the hung jury on the predicate acts. There was no proof of it. There was no proof it was part of club policy, and as much as they tried, the government could not come up with any incriminating minutes from any of our meetings. And then Latin Kings, several members of the Latin Kings have been covered under RICO charges. Also, a lot of the there's a current RICO, I believe it's a RICO charge currently against the AB of California. Also, at different times, the two Latin groups here in California have been indicted many times. And there's an open one right now that they're facing in court. I think in 2001, Major League Baseball team owners voted to eliminate two teams, presumably the Twins and the Expos. In 2002, the former minority owners of the Expos filed charges under the RICO Act against Major League Baseball Commissioner Bud Selig and former Expos owner Jeffrey Loria, claiming that Selig and Loria deliberately conspired to devalue the team for personal benefit in preparation for a move. If found liable, Major League Baseball could have been responsible for up to $300 million in punitive damages. The case lasted 2 years, successfully stalling the Expos' move to Washington or contraction during that time. It was eventually set to arbitration, where the arbitrator ruled in favor of Major League Baseball, permitting the move to Washington to take place. There you go. Also, LAPD had a RICO case against them. Here's a little bit on the John J. Gotti and Frank Ocasio were convicted on the April 2nd, 92 under the RICO Act and later sentenced to life in prison. In Tampa on October 6, 2006, 4 members of the Gambino crime family, Capo Ronnie One Arm Truccio, Terry Scaglione, Stephen Catalano, and Anthony Mucciaroni, and associate Kevin McMahon were tried under RICO statutes, found guilty, and sentenced to life in prison. I think McMahon flipped though. And then Lucchese family in the mid-90s, prosecuting attorneys Gregory O'Connell and Charles Rose used RICO charges to bring down the Lucchese's. Within an 18-month period, dismantling the Lucchese family had a profound financial impact on previously mafia-held businesses such as construction, garment, and garbage hauling. Here they dominated and extorted money through taxes, dues, and fees. An example of this extortion was through the garbage business. Hauling of garbage from the World Trade Center cost the building owners $1.2 million per year to be removed when the mafia monopolized the business, as compared to $150,000 a year when competitive bids could be sought. Bonanno family boss Joe Messino's trial began on May 24th, 2004, with Judge Nicholas Garufis presiding and Greg D. Andrus and Robert Hannox heading the prosecution. He now faced 11 RICO counts for 7 murders due to the prospect of prosecutors seeking the death penalty for the Siasha, which is George from Canada's murder. That case was severed to be tried separately: arson, extortion, loan sharking, illegal gambling, and money laundering. After deliberating for 5 days, a jury found Messino guilty of all 11 counts on July 30th, 2004. His sentencing was initially scheduled for October 12th, and he was expected to receive a sentence of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. The jury also approved the prosecutor's recommended $10 million forfeiture of the proceeds of his reign as Bonanno boss on the day of the verdict. I'll tell you right now, Shannon. I'll go back and look at it. Immediately after July 30th conviction, as court was adjourned, Messino requested a meeting with the judge, where he made his first offer to cooperate. He did so in hopes of sparing his life. He was facing the death penalty if found guilty of the Siasa murder. Indeed, one of John Ashcroft's final acts as Attorney General was to order federal prosecutors to seek the death penalty from Messino. Messino thus stood to be the first mob boss to be executed for his crimes, and the first mob boss to face the death penalty since Louis Lemke Bowalter was executed in 1944. Messino was the first sitting boss of a New York family to turn state's evidence, and the second in the history of the American mob to do so. Philadelphia crime boss Natale had flipped in '99. I don't really believe that was legit though. Ralph Natale, he wasn't really. Okay, the LAPD was April 2000. Federal Judge William J. Rea in Los Angeles ruling in one Rampart scandal. I think you're talking about Lou Baca. Are you talking about that sheriff Baca? No, this is about the Rampart scandal. In 2005, the U.S. Department of Justice Operation Family Secret indicted 14 Chicago outfit, also known as the Outfit, the Chicago Mob, the Chicago Mafia, or organized crime members, associates under Rico predicates. 5 defendants were convicted of Rico violations and other crimes. 6 pleaded guilty, 2 died before trial, and 1 was too sick to be tried. And then they had that one with those judges from Philadelphia that were sending kids to that juvenile program, and they were getting catch back for that. That one's a trip too. There's been a few over the years. So yeah, at the end of the day, I don't dig these laws. The Rico law, not at all. I think it's just it's for these cops to they're able to you know what I mean? They're just able to, it's like doing their job for them. You know what I mean? I don't believe, I think that when it's said that, reform and replace, the federal system, that needs to be in it. You know what I mean? That needs to be part of it. I don't believe that needs to be, taken off the books. It had a lot of, in the Senate, only 1 voted against it, and then in Congress, only 26, I think what I read, 26 voted against it. So it had big backing. It was big backing from Congress. So now I don't know how it would sit now. You know what I mean? If they were to vote on it again or do some changing, I don't know how that would come out. You know what I mean? But it's definitely garbage. It's a garbage law. It's just a garbage law. Just the fact, like I mentioned earlier, the cops are supposed to be held at a higher standard, right? But then you got a judge that's signing it off on them going into, breaking not only breaking somebody's house, but then to show up at your house, knocking on your door, posing as cable guys or phone guys or pest control or whatever the heck it is. You know what I mean? You're being deceiving right there with that. You know what I mean? Because let's all face it, if we were to do that, breaking somebody's house, we're gonna get broke off, right? We're gonna go to jail. If we do any of that stuff, but it's okay for them to do it. So it just doesn't sit well with me. I don't like it. But I'm gonna go ahead and shut this down. I appreciate everybody that came in. Shannon, Agnostics, Buffalo Billy, Frito 5K, Nelly Content Entertainment, Farmetto, Bella and Friends. Appreciate everybody that came in. We need pest control for these rats. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, turn your IG back on or make another one, Buffalo Billy, so I can get at you about helping me out with some of these things that I need for the channel, man. Like I said, I'll pay you. Thank you, Shannon, for stopping in. Yeah, I have a important Zoom call here coming up in 10-15 minutes. And I think I gotta download the link and all that to be able to get in there. So I want to make sure I find the email where the link sent to me, and I'm not doing it at the last minute. So I appreciate everybody that stopped in, and I appreciate everybody else that's going to come back and watch this video after it's uploaded, or listen to the video, I should say, because I'm using the avatar right now. But again, I appreciate everybody, and feel free, if you're new to the channel, feel free to sub, like, and share the channel, and also leave comments in the comment section. And I respond back to all the comments because I appreciate each and every one of you subscribers. And, you know, because without subscribers, viewers, there wouldn't be no channel, right? So again, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Have a good, safe remainder of your night. And look forward to waking up for another Hump Day Wednesday. That being said, Big Lou's tapping on out. What it do with Big Lou, NFZR2. Thanks, everybody.